Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I think we have a wonderful week ahead of us, and I think it has everything to do with what is potentially going to take place on Wednesday. And I think there's a good probability that we see the first of the altcoin ETFs get approved. Obviously, we know Ethereum has been approved, but more broadly, the altcoin ETFs get approved on Wednesday with the deadline of Greyscale Digital Large Cap Fund, Bitwise's fund, Hashdex's fund, and Franklin Templeton's sort of index of the cryptocurrency space in the form of an ETF within the United States. The final deadline for that, of course, is taking place this Wednesday, and we know there's a 95% probability of approval in 2025. The final deadline, having ticked all of the boxes, essentially is happening on Wednesday. And remember, David Sachs and others out there talking about July will be a good month. July is typically a good month for the crypto space and markets more broadly. So we'll be looking at that. All that happening on the back end, the S&P going on and entirely engulfing the pullback, where people were sort of giving us a little bit of criticism, rightfully so, about Trump's America, but we've maintained a far more positive outlook on Trump's America, certainly in regards to his economic projections. And we'll talk about that a little bit in this video, because he's kind of essentially saying to the cost-cutting Republicans to slow down in regards to cutting costs, and that growth is the sort of memorandum here. So we're going to be starting things off on the ETF news and what's potentially coming and getting you guys ready for Wednesday. We'll show you why technically we're very bullish on the space as a whole, and it has everything to do with Greyscale Digital Large Cap Fund and the crypto indexes that we follow in the forms of ETPs. How we have, we gave 10x price predictions. Many of them have sort of gone a distance in regards to that journey already, but they've got higher to go, and that makes us bullish on the whole space. We'll link the sort of altcoin ETFs of where the total cryptocurrency market cap is excluding Bitcoin, so the altcoin market, and why that's ready to rock and roll. Show you some examples of what we're predicting for that playing out in previous. Then we're going to fly by CoinShare Digital Asset Report, talk a little bit about Trump, and then we're going to wrap the video up. So as always, guys, hell of a lot to get into. Let's start things off with a tweet from Nate Garcia. Final SEC deadline this week on Greyscale Digital Large Cap ETF. So it's GDLC. And you guys know one of the sort of technical charts that we've been bullish or has given us a bullish outlook on the cryptocurrency space, and we see confluence in many crypto representing charts, is Grayscale's Digital Large Cap Fund. I have a $175 target for this. Obviously, we were shouting this out on the right shoulder. This has been a great technical chart for us, and this makes us very bullish. And the final deadline for the approval of this is, of course, on Wednesday. Just to show you that, remember, this was an update from Bloomberg's analysts as far as ETFs go, and they give a 95% probability of approval in 2025, and the final deadline for this is on the 2nd of July. It's not just Greyscale, it's Bitwise, it's Hashdex, it's Franklin Templeton. We've looked at all of these in regards to giving us a bullish barometer for the crypto space. If these are products that track multiple cryptocurrencies, well, if this goes up, or if these have an upward trajectory, one would assume that the underlying cryptos are going to do well in that environment. And of course, this aligns with the Bitcoin chart, the total chart, total 2, which we'll look at in just a second. But there's potentially a probability of this approval. He goes on to say, think high likelihood this is approved this Wednesday. Would then be followed by approval for individual ETFs on XRP, Sol, ADA, etc. He goes on to say, side note for SEC is approving GDLC is that it would provide nice test run for additional crypto assets in ETF wrappers. XRP, Sol, and ADA represent 10% of combined GDLC's holdings. Easy way to slow steps into digital assets. One other thing or thought, the SEC now allows private assets and ETFs up to 15% of holdings through issuers. So this is going to be very interesting. There's a high likelihood this happens, and just to use the UK as a barometer, the UK sort of equivalent SEC, the FCA, Financial Conduct Authority, they recently have essentially removed the block that they had in regards to ETNs, which are exchange traded notes, which is our equivalent of ETFs here in the United Kingdom. And this is from Duncan Moyer, the president of 21 Shares. We've been lucky enough to interview Duncan on a number of occasions here. But he says UK retail investors market is 2.4 trillion, assuming a 1% conversion rate into crypto. There's another 24 billion of potential demand, with the possibility lifting of the crypto ETP ban. And UK is one of the smaller markets. US is about to gain exposure to and be allowed to gain exposure to the altcoin sector more broadly. And this fundamental news, and I think Wednesday there's a good likelihood that it actually gets approved, is what's going to see this chart come to fruition. Just like we predicted with Greyscale's Bitcoin Trust. Obviously, we looked at this pattern. This got met perfectly. This was all on the back end of the sort of ETF news and rumors. Same thing took place with their ETH product, predicting down here. That made its target. Of course, we've got this target here for Greyscale Digital Large Cap Fund and the other ETPs, which lead us to be bullish on the cryptocurrency space. The last thing we said on these was the falling wedge that, of course, have played out, just like Bitcoin's falling wedge. I think this all just ultimately leads to continuation. This is some fundamental news that's going to set it. So mark your calendar for Wednesday, guys. It's going to be potentially a big day either way, and it's going to give us more clarity. And certainly technically, I looked at this with my patrons. This is one chart that makes me very bullish on the entire cryptocurrency space. The total cryptocurrency market cap really has just ran into, excluding Bitcoin, an all-time high. It's pulled back, just like we've seen so many others do. This is the DAX, which we were predicting was going to go to nearly double from, or not double, but go from sort of 16,000 to 22,000. You can see how this progressed after it sort of put in its handle. And I think this is essentially the journey that Bitcoin or the total cryptocurrency market, excluding Bitcoin, has ahead of it. So the altcoin sector. You can see the DAX made its target quite recently. The DAX has recovered very well from obviously these sort of tariffs, but so have the markets generally. So I think we've got the stage set for a very bullish sort of time ahead of us. I think DAX is a great example of what sort of crypto has to come. Still a falling wedge on this that's got to play out that sees that recovery. And then we've got the market going from sort of 1.1 trillion to 6.3. So you're talking a 5+X. As an overall market, that would align also with what we think is coming for the sort of large caps or the ETPs on the back end of fundamental news. And remember, we're looking at altcoin approval, everything excluding Bitcoin. The stars really are aligned. Of course, this was gold that is literally very close to making its cup and handle. If you guys want to become a Patreon, I will teach you sort of my method of technical analysis. Let's just go ahead and end this so we can show you it. I think the total market cap has that ahead of it. And I think Wednesday there could be a fundamental tipping point in regards to seeing that come to fruition. So this week could be a significant one with the deadline taking place on Wednesday. On the back end of all of this, or in the lead up to it, we are seeing inflows really start to accelerate in the cryptocurrency space. This is CoinShares' digital asset fund flows weekly report. Inflows for H1 stand at 17.8 billion, driven by geopolitical and monetary policy. Digital asset investments products saw 2.7 billion in inflows last week, marking 11 consecutive weeks of inflows, bringing H1 total close at 17.8 billion. The US dominated regions flows with 2.65. It's why it's so important that the US gets this regulatory clarity and these products, is because it's the largest pool of liquidity. In inflows, meanwhile, Hong Kong recorded consistent outflows, totaling 132 million in June. Bitcoin led with 83% of inflows, 2.2 billion, while Ethereum saw half a billion. Short Bitcoin products continued to see outflows, signaling positive market sentiment. I think one of the other real standouts, and it's consistently a standout, was, of course, XRP. In regards to the macro, one thing that I spoke to you guys about on yesterday, was the fact that the S&P 500 had gone and put in a new high. And this is very bullish for markets as a whole. It typically is going to lead to continuation for the S&P 500. And if you divide Bitcoin by the S&P 500, Bitcoin's in an uptrend against the S&P 500. We're expecting, based on what the S&P 500 has done, for the S&P 500 to continue to go up. Bitcoin's going to continue to outperform it. And of course, we've got that all technically signaled with our Bitcoin charts. So when we cross-analyze the markets, it looks good. I think personally, this is going to be a bit of a bull flag that you're going to see play out for Bitcoin. And you're going to get that continuation to the upside. And I think you could see some real fireworks, certainly if Greyscale Digital Large Cap Fund and the other sort of ETFs are concerned or approved, the basket ones anyway. More broadly, this is an interesting tweet from Lynn Oldham. This is from Trump yesterday. For all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember you still have to get re-elected. Very telling that. Don't go too crazy. We will make it all up times 10 with growth more than ever before. And we spoke about how the kind of proliferation of the monetary system isn't going to stop, and that's why this channel was created, to help people understand the importance of getting into an asset that is outside the monetary system and being able to actually use the monetary system to your advantage rather than trying to climb up a greased pole. And that equation is only going to accelerate. I think what we're going to see with the implementation of the Internet of Value enabled by public distributed ledgers is a real unlock in regards to the financial world and an economic boom more broadly, more of a kind of golden age sort of happening around technology, which has some very scary and negative ramifications. So that's really it from me, guys. Just a short and sweet one. Technically, we're unbelievably bullish. We're giving you some reasons why. And I think the final deadline for the SEC to approve Greyscale Digital Large Cap Fund and some of the others taking place on Wednesday. Remember, there's been a 95% probability based on Bloomberg's senior analysts as far as ETFs are concerned that these get approved this year. Final deadline's on Wednesday. Technically, the Greyscale Digital Large Cap looks good. And so do many of the others. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. See you all in the next one.